What if the person you trusted to guide your future was the one who unraveled it? I used to believe that boundaries were clear in professional spaces: student and teacher, authority and learner. But that belief started to blur one rainy afternoon in his office. He was the college principal, married, respected, and when he invited me for an extra class, I didn't think twice. I thought it was about academics, about mentorship, about opportunity. But sometimes, the most dangerous affairs don't begin with desire. They begin with admiration, the kind that slips under your skin slowly, quietly, until you mistake it for something pure. I didn't know then how much that one decision would change everything. Not just for me, but for all of us. My name is Erica Monroe, and a year ago, I was just another overworked graduate student trying to keep her head above water in Boston. I was in the second year of my master's program in educational psychology, juggling coursework, a teaching assistant position, and the long, slow recovery from a breakup that had quietly shattered me the winter before. You know, that hollow feeling that lingers long after love has left. I carried that around like a second backpack. Heavy, always present. It was in that days of early spring, cherry blossoms peeking out along Commonwealth Avenue, the city still cold but pretending to be warm, that I met Dr. Jonathan Carrington. He wasn't supposed to be a major figure in my academic life. He was the college principal, technically the dean, but everyone called him Principal Carrington because he ran the School of Education like it was his own legacy. Late 40s, maybe 50, with the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter without realizing why. Tall, tailored suits in navy or charcoal, silver at his temples, and a voice smooth enough to stop a room. He didn't speak often at open forums, but when he did, everyone leaned in. I first caught his attention during a departmental seminar. I had asked a question about implicit bias in standardized testing design, and I noticed his eyes lingered a little longer than necessary when I finished speaking. After the session, he approached me in the hallway. Just a compliment, nothing inappropriate. But there was a spark in his tone, like he was already measuring more than just my academic potential. A few days later I got the email. Erica, I was impressed by your contributions in the last seminar. I'd like to invite you to a more focused discussion around your thesis research. Would Thursday afternoon work for you? I assumed it was related to my upcoming paper. He had published extensively in areas that overlapped with my work. It felt like an opportunity, one of those rare chances to be mentored by someone who could shape your future. His office was exactly what you'd imagine. Rich mahogany bookshelves lined with first editions, framed photos of academic conferences, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It smelled faintly of cedarwood and leather, the air warm and still. He offered me a seat in a deep, buttoned armchair across from his desk. The lighting was soft, comfortable. That first meeting was respectful, thoughtful. But even then, something was unspoken. Something I didn't yet have the courage or clarity to name. At first, it felt innocent, those Thursday meetings. They started with academic articles and thesis outlines. We discussed methodology, research ethics, and the flaws of the American education system. But somewhere along the way, the tone shifted. I couldn't say when exactly. Maybe it was the time he brought me a cappuccino without asking how I took it, but somehow got it exactly right. Or maybe it was the way he started remembering tiny things I'd said in passing, like how I missed my dad's cooking or that I hated the sound of ticking clocks. One Thursday, I arrived a little early, rain clinging to my coat in cold drops. He handed me a towel from a small closet behind his desk. "You really ought to invest in a sturdier umbrella," he said with a soft smile. I laughed, brushing water off my sleeves. If I start investing in things like that, I'll have to give up groceries. His smile faded just a little as he studied me. "You work too hard. I can see it in your eyes." That was the first moment I felt something stir. Unease, curiosity. Something unnameable. "You don't know me well enough to say that," I replied, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "Don't I?" His eyes didn't waver. I should have walked away then, or at least put up firmer walls. But instead, I smiled like I didn't feel the ground shifting beneath me. The meetings started lasting longer. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk about my thesis. He'd ask about my childhood, my last relationship, what I feared most. I told him things I hadn't even told my best friend. Things I didn't know still lived in me. One afternoon, as I spoke about my mom's mental health struggles, I caught a strange look in his eyes. Sympathy, maybe. Or recognition. "You remind me of someone I knew," he said quietly. "She always tried to hold everything together for everyone else." I looked at him, unsure of how to respond. "What happened to her?" Yes. He was silent for a moment. Then, "She stopped holding everything. Let it all fall. And she was freer for it." I remember feeling a tightness in my chest. Like he was asking me to let go of something, but I didn't know what. The next week I told myself I was imagining things. That maybe he was just kind, generous. That the occasional long glances or accidental touches didn't mean anything. But then he invited me to meet off campus, to review a new research article he didn't have clearance to share on school property. I didn't question it. I wanted to believe it was all still above board. We met at a quiet cafe in the South End. It was tucked between two brownstones, the kind of place with mismatched mugs and dim lighting. He was already seated when I arrived, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. More casual than I'd ever seen him. "Hope you don't mind," he said. "I figured we could talk somewhere less formal." "Sure," I said, but my heart had already started pounding. We didn't talk about research that night. Instead, we talked about regrets. About how he never intended to work in administration. How he missed teaching. How his marriage had become more of a contract than a connection. He didn't speak bitterly. Just with the kind of honesty that felt too raw for a cafe. "Sometimes I think about just disappearing," he said softly, staring into his coffee. "Starting over." "Where would you go?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked at me then. Really looked. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe somewhere warm. Quiet. With someone who sees me." I felt my throat tighten. The air between us was suddenly thick. Too thick. "I should go," I said, standing too fast. "I have papers to grade." He nodded. Didn't stop me. But his eyes followed me all the way out the door. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling for hours. I knew what was happening. I knew I was on a ledge, and if I took one more step, there would be no going back. But a part of me, an aching, reckless part, was already leaning forward. It was a Friday evening in early May when everything came undone. He texted me earlier that day, just one line. "Come by tonight. Office. 6:30, we need to talk." The words didn't sound like an invitation. They felt like a prelude to something heavier. Final. I arrived early and stood outside his door, my heart rattling inside my chest. The hallway was nearly empty. Campus had that quiet hum that settles before summer. Half-empty buildings, the smell of cut grass, windows left cracked open for stale spring air. When I finally knocked, he opened the door almost instantly. He looked tired. Not physically, but like something was weighing on his soul. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled up, tie on the desk. His eyes scanned me like he wasn't sure what he was about to do. I sat down across from him, bracing. He didn't speak right away. Just folded his hands and stared at them. "Did something happen?" I finally asked, though I already knew the answer lived in the air between us. He nodded slowly, then looked up. "She knows." A chill slid down my spine. "Your wife." He nodded again. "She found my phone," he said quietly. "Saw our texts. Some pictures. I thought I'd deleted everything, but..." He stopped, exhaled hard. "I was careless. Or maybe I wanted to be caught." I didn't know what to say. My pulse roared in my ears. "What did she say?" asked, my voice barely there. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just looked at me like I wasn't real anymore. A long silence stretched between us. "I'm not asking you to feel sorry for me," he said after a while. I did this. I hurt her. I broke something we spent years trying to keep alive. And for what? I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd admired. The man who had made me feel seen in ways no one had in years. But now he just looked lost. Do you regret it? Asked, my throat dry. He paused. No. I regret the way. Not the feeling. Something cracked in my chest. I wanted to believe that meant something. That the connection between us hadn't just been a moment of selfishness in the middle of two lonely lives. But then came the part that hit harder than I was ready for. She wants me to stay, he said. Not because she's forgiven me, but because we have a family. Because there's still something worth preserving. I nodded, numb. And what does that mean for us? He looked at me with an ache I still remember. It means this ends. Tonight. I swallowed hard, the weight of it settling like lead in my stomach. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. I wasn't just a distraction, I said quietly, not really asking but needing to hear it. No, he whispered. You were a mirror. You showed me who I'd become. And who I could have been if things were different. I stood slowly, not trusting myself to speak again. My hand hovered over the doorknob. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, I said, my voice shaking. You already gave me a piece of it, he replied. I didn't look back when I left. The hallway felt colder, emptier. Like whatever warmth had existed between us had sealed itself off behind that door. And I knew, even as tears blurred the hallway signs, that something in me had shifted forever. It's strange, really, how something so consuming can disappear so quietly. After that night I never saw him again. No late emails. No accidental run-ins on campus. He took a leave of absence for personal reasons, according to the administration, and by the time fall semester came around, his name had faded from most conversations like chalk washed off a blackboard. But not for me. For weeks I kept replaying every moment in my head, wondering if I had misread it all, if he'd just been lonely. Or if I had. Maybe we both were. Two people clinging to the illusion of connection in the middle of academic buildings and paper deadlines and broken promises we didn't know we were still grieving. I don't hate him. That surprises people when I say it, but it's the truth. He gave me something even if it wasn't love. He gave me clarity. And a kind of awakening I wasn't looking for, but probably needed. Sometimes that's more dangerous than love, honestly. The hardest part wasn't the ending. It was everything that came after. The quiet unraveling of the version of myself I thought I was. The second guessing. The guilt. The anger. Not just at him but at me too. For stepping into a fire I saw coming. I graduated eventually. Moved to Seattle. Started teaching. I still think about him sometimes, usually in passing. When I smell that same cedarwood scent on someone in an elevator. Or when a student asks a question that catches me off guard and I hear myself answer in a tone that isn't entirely my own. People always expect dramatic endings. Scandals, consequences, someone paying the price. But sometimes the price is just the quiet. The kind that settles in your chest and makes you ask yourself questions you don't want to answer. Would I do it again? I don't know. I honestly don't. But I've learned this. Not every story needs to end with a villain. Sometimes it ends with two flawed people who crossed a line and had to live with what they saw in each other on the other side. And maybe that's enough. Or maybe it never will be.